everybody, it's Safi and Marco, Dish Out on the Movies. And today we are doing another Best
Okay, good.
Picture
Winner
at the Academy Awards. And it was in 1993. And it was called Unforgiven. And according to what I read, it is one of 3 westerns which have won an Academy Award, which is kind of for a Best Picture, which is kind of hard to believe. And but this was directed by Clint Eastwood, and he said that he had gotten the script for this, or the story, back in the 80s, but he sat on it until he was old enough to play the old gunfighter in the movie.
No, that's not what happened.
That's what he said.
No, what happened was that was for Cry Macho that came out last year. That wasn't for this movie.
Ooh, Cry Macho?
It was terrible.
Sounds like it.
No, for that one, he waited until he was this old to play it. But for Unforgiven, he said that apparently his script reader, because there's so many scripts he's given, he had a script reader in the 80s. The script writer read it and said it wasn't very good. And so he didn't bother to read it for 10 years. And then he just decided to read it to see if he would want to do it. And so it just shows you how there's a lot of this problem in Hollywood where you have all these people
middlemen,
and they have terrible taste. They don't know what they're talking about. Because, I mean, that just, Safi, you could never trust the opinion of that guy again.
I know.
If he said that the script is bad, like, what a terrible reader. I mean, when people say your opinion doesn't matter, he's the type of person that we're talking about. Because, like, to say that this story isn't very good, like, I'm sorry, but that's just objectively wrong. Like, no matter what, like, no matter if you like the movie, if you think it's okay, or if you think it's a masterpiece, objectively, the script is really good, the story is really good, and that's that. Like, there are a couple of flaws with the movie, obviously, but not really that much. Not very many things bad to say about this one. Safi?
And it really didn't have a lot to do with the flaws. I don't really think had a lot to do with the story or the acting.
No, the acting was perfect. The acting was perfect.
It was really, well, for me, even for Marco, well, I guess there was a little bit of confusion about the story, but just how point A got to point B.
Well, we'll talk about that.
We'll talk
Safi,
about
don't do that.
But it was the lighting, which is something I complain about often at certain times about modern, like, series shows that have been on TV. I've complained a lot about darkness, and Marcos talked about sucking out the color as being some kind of method that people like to do nowadays.
Well, they do that nowadays all the time for every single movie that comes out.
And this was 1993, though, so I guess maybe that was the dawn of
No, they did not suck out any color in this movie. I don't know what you're talking about.
It was just they muddled they made it so dark that you couldn't see.
That's lighting. That doesn't have anything to do with editing.
No, I didn't say anything about it. I'm talking about lighting.
You're saying it's like the dawn of sucking out the color. That's false.
Okay, Marco.
Okay, speak up. This is a review. Speak up.
Yeah, let's not be catty and mean.
Speak up.
Or you'll have somebody
we're talking about this movie. What are you doing?
Well, let's talk about the movie.
What are you doing now? We're supposed to be talking about the movie. So, Safi, if you're ready to talk about the movie, and speak up now. Okay, so it was really funny because this was my second choice, and Safi immediately complained about it because it's Clint Eastwood and it's a Western. that's a problem for her for some
I
reason.
don't usually like westerns of any kind. And as much as it's fun to go out west and go look for ghost towns, I used to go out with my parents rock hunting, and we would come upon these old ghost towns, these old mines, and that's all the Wild West. That's what it was back then. And but watching a movie about is never. Mainly because there's a lot. There's in the past
Because they're boring.
Well, they're boring, but there's just been a lot of fake stuff that probably never even happened. It was just like drama for Hollywood.
Well, that's like most movies, though. They write stories that never happened.
Well, I know that, but it was just
is.
I just didn't care for them at all. And Clint Eastwood, he I have to give him credit. He has a ton of experience. He has been an actor at the minimum since he was a very young man, and he was in a lot of classic war movies, and he did a lot of westerns that were they were fun and they were good. And apparently he gave credit to his or a shout out to all the two men or whoever made these westerns that he had starred in years and years ago when he was young. But he did a really good job. This is why these pictures, where maybe I would never watch them, that they were given a Best Picture award because it was I'd say a very high quality movie. And one thing that made the movie good was the acting. The cast was really, I'd say, outstanding. And so I enjoyed the movie, and it was really a very simple story, but they just it was really good. It was just it's kind of like they took a slice out of something that happened a long time ago, and they put it on screen, and they acted out the whole thing like a play, and it was really good. So I thought, now they didn't give it a cinematography award, but some because they didn't really show it in depth. They just showed like blips of it.
Blips?
Like at the beginning and the end, they had this one scene. It's almost like where it was a package, like you had the front cover and you had the back cover, and you had this beautiful scene of maybe a sunset and the skyline.
Is that good or bad
it's
to
a
you?
good thing. It is beautiful out west. I mean, New Mexico is like the most beautiful place in the world. It is so beautiful, and that wasn't New Mexico anyway. That was up in, what was it, Wyoming? And but still, out west, it's just
in those specific shots, it was Kansas.
Oh, really? Well, Kansas is very beautiful.
Or whatever.
At sunset, I mean, it's just flat in a lot of places, and that's very interesting that it took place that they filmed it in Kansas. I've been through Kansas many times on I-70 to get from the Midwest to Colorado, and for vacations, and it can be a very picturesque, interesting place. Instead of people get freaked out over how flat and it just goes for miles with nothing, no mountains, no water. It's just beautiful fields.
You know what I'm surprised about, Safi?
What?
I'm surprised that none of these dipshits have said that this movie is like an homage to The Wizard of Oz or anything. Because remember that?
Oh, yeah. And
they had that Fargo episode.
Yeah,
and since it took place in Kansas, they automatically said it was The Wizard of Oz.
Well, it's true that every year, every single spring, there's a tornado alarm. Every year. I've been through it. I lived through it. I grew up there.
Anyways, that's not important. Let's talk about this movie.
Well,
let's get into this movie.
Okay.
So, this movie, automatically, one of the main issues I had, and it was a problem, was the lighting. Because there were a lot of scenes that were very integral to the movie that were hard to see because they took place at night, and they were, you could hardly see anything.
And then there was a storm to add to it.
Yeah, there had to be rainstorms a couple of times in the movie.
It worse.
And that was like, oh no, like, oh, we got to deal with rain now too. Like, it's already badly. I mean, it just, you have the opening scene where these prostitutes get attacked. I couldn't tell what was going on. No. I couldn't see any of it. And that's a problem because that's the whole reason the movie happened.
Right.
So why in the heck would this win Best Picture if you can't even see the scene where it's the whole reason the movie happens? Like, that is a big problem. And there are a couple of more times like that throughout the movie, a couple of more scenes at night where they're just so hard to see. Like, it's like the only lighting are these little tiny glimmers and glares of orange and yellow, and that's it. Like, you can barely see anything, and so you just have to, like, sit there and, like, be like, okay, I guess...
You have to listen to the people talk, and it's a mess.
That blob over there must be Clint Eastwood, and that blob over there must be Morgan Freeman. I don't really know, though, because it's so terribly bad lighting. And I really did not like the lighting in this movie. It was very, very problematic. And to me, it kind of affected the movie because when I think of Westerns, I think of really good lighting. I think of, like, in that Duel in the Sun movie, they had so many different colors. You could see everything. There were plenty of night scenes in Duel in the Sun. You could see it all, though. You didn't have any problems seeing what went on. And there was that really good scene where the whole picture was red, and everything was red, and it was just for one scene, and the lighting was so perfect in that movie. But then you have this movie, and honestly, it looked pretty dull. Like, the picture itself, it looked pretty dull and boring. Like, there was nothing really special about the lighting in this movie. And to me, that was kind of an issue, because when I think of Westerns, I think of bright colors. Now, there were some good shots in this movie, like Safi said, the beginning and the end. And a couple of other ones, too. But other than that, this movie looked kind of dull. I mean, it was shot very dull. And so that kind of took away from it. Other than that, though, the story itself is pretty good. It's pretty good. I mean, it's very simple. Safi's not going to like this, but really the main villain of the movie is the sheriff of the town, because these two cowboys, they rough up this prostitute, and one of them, he cuts her up. And
with a knife.
I don't know if it's implied if he mutilated her in any way, but it's like, if he just cut her face, cut all over her face and everything for some reason.
It was implied to me. I thought that she was really mutilated, but then when they showed her...
I don't know.
But they showed her later on, she didn't look that bad.
No, but I mean, like, her genitals. Like, did he mutilate them too?
Her face. Oh, I don't know. Maybe. Since we couldn't see what was going on, I don't know.
I don't. Who knows what he did?
See that's one thing we've had another issue with is things happening, and you have to make up the story yourself, and that's not our job.
No, and honestly, like, Safi, let's be honest. Did the cuts really make her look that bad at all?
I didn't think so. They acted like she was marred for life. But maybe if what happened, what Marco suggested, I never even thought about that.
Well, that's the only thing I could think of. If, like, he just, like, sliced up her face a little bit. It's not like she's a burn victim or something.
Well, I mean, what did they say? Maybe she could. What was it that she could do now? That
the guy said. the guy said she should put a veil over her face.
There
like,
was that,
why?
But they also said now she could just do something. I can't remember.
I don't know.
A certain job that only somebody with a cut-up face could do.
I have no idea because
I can't remember.
She really didn't look that different at all.
I didn't think she looked bad at all.
I mean,
I
Safi,
was shocked.
how would you rate her on a scale of 1 to 10 with those cuts? Go ahead,
I could
Safi.
hardly see him. There was, a kind of very faint scars, and
what's your rating?
I'd say I give her a 9.
Oh.
Well, I could see some tiny little outline.
Well, it's like, who cares? These like little tiny scars.
And
it's like some sort of a big deal for these fucking drunk cowboys and these weird, ugly guys in the Wild West. Like, this is some sort of a deal breaker for them. Like, you're gonna tell me that like all the other prostitutes have been taken up in their rooms and she's the last one left, and you have all these ugly-ass, drunken, inbred, western hillbilly fuckers, and they can't handle a couple of little tiny slices on her face? I mean, that's just fucking retarded. And it's funny, Safi, because that's another flaw, is that was very Hollywood, wasn't it? That, oh, you have this woman... She got cut up real badly, they say. Like, oh no, she's never gonna work again.
Well, I thought, there's been in modern history, people having chemicals thrown in their faces and set on fire, and they really did look horrible.
What about
and
Mason?
They had to have 50,000 surgeries, which they would not have had back then.
And what about Mason from Hannibal? What about that guy? What about that?
Oh. And he had, he couldn't even get everything fixed up.
Gross. But then
you
you have her, and it's like she's got a couple of little red lines on her face, and it's like, who cares?
I was shocked. I really was. I was like, that was the girl who was cut? I really was shocked.
I know. I was like, oh, this is really not that big of a deal.
In fact, I thought it was. I wasn't even positive it was the girl because she looked so good. I was thinking, how could that be her? So, anyway.
I would have said that the bigger problem is her hair, because her hair is kind of like, it's kind of like so white that it makes her look kind of like a 90-year-old woman or something.
Well, she was very blonde.
So I would say that like that's a bigger flaw than the little tiny red lines on her face. And so the thing with like making this big deal out of these lines on her face is just kind of like, it's bizarre. It's like are these people mentally ill or something? Like, are they all funny in the head that they're making this like big deal about like these little tiny red lines? And like, how would she, and that's another thing, is that they said that he cut her eyes out. I didn't see anything like that.
At all. Oh.
He didn't cut her eyes out at all. Her eyes were in her sockets. What do the cowboys want to have sex with her eyes too? Like, I don't understand what the problem would be with her eyes getting cut out either. Like, I don't understand how that would make some sort of a difference to these drunken cowboys.
Well, I guess in terms of appearance, they would have a problem with it, but in terms of, what would you call it, just damage to somebody, that would be a problem. I mean, they would be blind. But anyway, I didn't even hear that.
And guess what? It's the Wild West. Why don't they just put some glass eyes in her head? She'd have glass eyes.
I don't know.
She could be like Mad-Eye Moody from Harry Pothead. So anyways, let's get into more of the story, since we spent a long time just talking, because it's important. That's very important. The fact that her face, she was quote-unquote cut up, and it's like, how was she cut up though? Like, there's another movie that I watched last year where you could see a character cut up another character And you could clearly see, like, even though it's off screen, you could see him cut a specific area, and it was really, like, awful to see, even though she was sedated. And so, like, if we would have been able to see something like that, like, I would have understood, but, I mean, people died because of her face, Safi. I mean, people died because she has little red scratches on her face, like a cat scratched her face. Like, that's pretty bizarre.
That's true.
Why did people have to die because of a couple little scratches on her face?
Well, there's what were the prostitutes, or somebody put out a...
They put out a bounty.
They put out a bounty.
Which they called a whore's gold.
On these cowboys, these 2 cowboys or whatever who...
And that's another problem,
did
is
the
that
damage.
In the first scene where they attack, you don't see their faces at all. So it's like, you don't even really know what the bad guys look like. But that gets to my second point, is that the sheriff is really the bad guy in this movie, because he is evil, he's corrupt, and this movie is very pro-gun, that's for sure.
Well, yeah,
because
that's the Wild West, though. That is totally not surprising.
Well, it is very relevant to modern society, because what is one of the telltale signs that this town is evil, Safi?
Well, that was another weird thing. I've never seen this in a Western in my life. They had them, when you came to the town, you had to surrender your weapons.
Yeah.
To, I don't even know who you're supposed to give them to, and where they keep them, and how they keep track.
I guess the sheriff keeps them.
And
that is a telltale sign of evil and tyranny. The fact that these people,
shocked.
These citizens, aren't allowed to arm themselves. That's
what
number
if there was
one.
A rattlesnake wandering around, getting into your house, and you're...
And remember, he said, "There's no snakes in here."
Oh, yes, there is.
There's no snakes around here.
Lots of rattlesnakes.
But the thing is, though, is that he knows that those guns, that people need them to defend themselves against people like him. And they need them to kill him. And that's why he takes them away, because he feels threatened by them. And that's exactly why modern societies like to take people's guns away. Because these people in power are threatened by them. And that's what they did in Australia. And, you know, it just shows that that's bad and that's wrong. And that it really leads to this type of town. I mean, it's a very well done metaphor for today's society. Because, I mean, he was really evil. And it was so funny because there were all these examples of why you would want to have a gun. Like, there was a part at the end, spoiler alert, where Clint Eastwood is getting away. And you had all these citizens in the town that picked up some guns that they found, and they refused to shoot him because they weren't deputies, and all these little excuses. And it just showed that, like, well, what if they did all have guns and they knew how to shoot? He would have been dead, and the sheriff would have survived because they would have protected him. And so it just shows that that whole mentality is wrong.
Well, you're looking at it a little skewed.
No, I'm not.
Well, I would
That's
look
what
at
the
it as
movie
they
gave
didn't
me.
really. I was thinking they just didn't really like him, and they didn't want to help him. And they didn't, and they were just exaggerating that they couldn't use those weapons.
They couldn't use them because they don't know how to use guns, because they're not allowed to have guns in this town.
To me, that's I didn't hear that.
And because they said they weren't deputies, and that just shows that oh, who cares if you're not deputies?
Well, I look at it a different way, and I'm thinking they didn't really like them. Like those prostitutes, the reason why they put this bounty on them in the first place, I'm not even sure it was all the girls, because they had a quote pimp, but they didn't have that name back then.
He did not put up any bounty.
Well, then it was them.
It was
They
them.
were very unhappy about the consequences that those cowboys faced for
and that's another
abusing
thing,
that girl.
That because of that abuse, the sheriff, all he did was make them give up a couple of horses.
Yes, that was their punishment. And he would, because they did show this happening later, he would whip somebody. That was like one of the punishments you would get if you did something wrong. You would be whipped.
It was telling who he chose to whip.
Yeah, I know. But anyway, I mean, this wasn't some little tiny whip thing. This was like a bull whip, I think, because it sounded bad and it looked kind of bad. And so anyway, I look at it that those townspeople, they really didn't like him. Like those prostitutes did not like what he didn't do. They thought they should have faced further consequences.
But the point is,
they didn't even go to jail.
The point is that the townspeople weren't in control. They were under a dictatorship by that sheriff.
That's true too.
And so they weren't capable of even doing that if they wanted to. They wouldn't have been able to kill Clint Eastwood because they don't know what to do.
Yeah,
because they've all been dumbed down by this disgusting, evil sheriff.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, with the punishment, what I thought was that was funny because that reminded me a lot of with O.J. Simpson, how he killed his wife and he killed that other guy, Ron, for no reason. And what did he have to do? He had to just, he supposedly had to pay money to them from a civil suit, and then he didn't even pay them. And so to me, that's what it reminded me of, it reminded me of that and how that stuff can happen. And so I thought that actually the movie, surprisingly, like it had a lot of good lessons in it. Like it had a lot of good lessons and things that you could analyze from it and take from it. But the problem was that there was some structure issues for me.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
It was very slow in the first half with the way that, like, they spent, like, I don't know, like 30 minutes with that English Bob and the writer and how he comes to town and he gets disarmed. And then there's this writer guy and he switches sides and, there's all this, like, extra stuff that I felt like I wasn't really that interested in that at all. Like, I was kind of like, yeah, okay, this is fine, but
I don't know why they had him in there as a character, because I really don't know what value he added to it.
Yeah.
He was with English Bob because English Bob was an Englishman who was like Billy the Kid. I mean, he was also a killer. And he was actually coming into town for this money, too.
Well, you like seeing him anyway because he was Richard Harris.
Yeah, okay. And
that's what you said.
Richard Harris had a very distinguished career, and I think when he was doing this, he was sick. So they had this thing where he got beaten up by the sheriff, and I know, hopefully that was all with the stunt man, and he didn't even get a hair on his head touched, because he would have been kind of miserable with the sickness. But anyway, this writer, I mean, he was just looking for the most accurate story, and so you could tell he was almost kind of like a paparazzi person in a way, because he although he had written some books or a book about like famous gunfighters, or about, like, I don't know, like if they were biographies or like stories about like whole events they were part of. I'm not sure, but he was with English Bob to, like, I think, document a story. And then when they got there and the sheriff did all this stuff, and then he started talking to him about this past gunfight or whatever that English Bob was a part of. The count that the writer had in his book differed from the one that the sheriff told him. In other words, the sheriff really knew what had happened, and the writer had been given a wrong version or something. And so he went from person to person to get the better story or the most accurate story.
The writer was kind of a waste of time too.
Yeah, I don't know what he was there for. I don't know what he did for the story.
The only thing that I really liked that he did was that he said at the end that the sheriff told him that usually people who are good gunfighters, they shoot the best gun first. Mm-hmm. And then he asked Clint Eastwood, who did he shoot first? Yeah, and I thought that's actually a pretty interesting thing, but didn't really do much with it because the movie tried to have like an anti-violence type of slant to it.
Well, I think he might have been there to provide a little bit of backstory to the major characters, to William Money, Clint Eastwood, and to English Bob, and himself for the writer, which you didn't really, you kind of get it into little tiny fragments here and there, but the writer, told the sheriff actually told the writer the story and of English Bob. And then later on when they talk about William Money, well, you find out all about what he did. Well, not all, but you find out a bit of information, and it was because of the writer. So I don't know if that's what that was about. I don't know, but otherwise I don't think he added anything to the story.
He really didn't, and so the movie was kind of slow, and then there was this stuff with Clint Eastwood, and he just straight up abandons these two little kids of his. Like, he's like, I'll be back in a couple of weeks. You guys just remember your mom's spirit is watching over you. And it's like, what is the spirit of their mom gonna come from above and come out like in Poltergeist and take care of them or
make
something?
Them their dinner.
Like, I didn't understand that at all. Like, he just straight up abandons these two children. And I thought, like, this is really bizarre. And then he gets with Morgan Freeman, and I was really glad that Morgan Freeman was in it because
Me too.
I would like to actually see a whole Western just with Morgan Freeman. Because he was kind of like a very minor side character in this movie. He was kind of pussified at certain points, and so I'd like to see him star in a Western actually after seeing this movie.
Yeah.
And then there's this kid character, Ned, and he's kind of like, he had some good story to him. I thought that he could have just provided all of the backstories for everyone instead of that writer, and including the thing at the end with the shooting the best gunman first. And then it gets good really in the second half when they start killing people. But I will say, like, I would say honestly that the best thing about this movie is Gene Hackman's performance. I thought he gave the best performance, and that he was really the best part of the movie.
And like, you said he got a Best Supporting Actor?
Yeah, and he deserved it. Thank God he got that, because he really deserved it. He was so evil that, like, he was very uncomfortable to watch, because he was just pure evil. And that was another thing, was like, you gotta wonder, like, why is he the way he is? Because, I mean, he is just pure evil. And he doesn't even care about what happened to those hookers. What really did happen. We didn't get to see it. But what he really cared about was his fucking porch. He just wanted to build his porch and fix that up and do it himself. And that's what he really cared about more than anything else in the movie. And also disarming his citizens, which is a telltale red flag of a dictatorship. And, he's really, if it gets down to it, to me, if you want to make any comparison, he's kind of like an evil Andy Griffith without any Barney. So I would say that's a good way to think about him. But there's this thing that happens in the second half that Safi and I both disliked with the editing and the structure. And that is that they have this scene where he's talking to the quote-unquote disfigured prostitute, which She's got a couple little marker lines on her face. A couple little fine point Sharpie lines. He talks to her. And then right after that, they cut to the bad cowboys and them are shooting at each other at a canyon. Like, just right after that. It's so jarring that I thought, like, this is terrible. Like, they just, all of a sudden, they have caught up to the bad cowboys. They're shooting at them. Just all of a sudden. You have no idea how it happened or anything. It was just effing ridiculous.
Yeah, how did they find them so fast?
Yeah, it was really weird.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, this is like a big flaw. Like, how in the hell could that guy win Best Editing? Well, I don't know if it was in the script or anything, but, like, that is, like, really weird that we didn't get to see them get to that canyon and we didn't get to see them come upon them and get to them where they were at that vantage point. I thought that was really weird. And they tried to have a couple of, like, anti-violence things in this movie. Like, they had that guy, the younger cowboy, and he took 1,000,000 years to die, and he just wanted a drink of water, and I thought that was kind of queer. Like, honestly, it didn't make me feel anything at all. Like, the guy got what he deserved. Like, I didn't feel bad for him at all. So I don't know what that was about. Like, and then they had another thing where the other bad guy got killed on the toilet. And I just thought that was funny more than anything. Like, also the fact that, like, you have this guy with a target on his head, and he goes to the bathroom all by himself. He doesn't have anyone come with him to guard the outhouse at all.
But they asked him, though. He said he didn't want anybody.
I just thought that was stupid.
But they could have guarded him anyway.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have known if they were watching out for him.
They could have kept watch at the window or something like that. Something sneaky.
Yeah, I agree.
And I thought that was just stupid.
I didn't think that was right.
So that really didn't, like, I really didn't feel anything at all. The only people I felt for were Clint Eastwood, Morgan Freeman, the prostitutes, kinda, even though they weren't ever really in danger except for the opening scene. And that was another thing, was I was confused why the prostitutes don't really get hurt at all in the movie. I mean, at one point, they said something about how he chased a couple of them out of town or something. I don't know. They didn't really show it. And then they had the thing with Morgan Freeman. Morgan Freeman dies. He dies off camera.
Yeah.
Don't even get to see that.
I was shocked. Well, he wanted to know, what did he want to know? Their
identities.
Their names. And Morgan wouldn't tell him. Actually, let's see. His name is Ned Logan. And
oh God, I called the kid Ned.
What was the kid's name? Is
the
Schofield.
The Schofield kid. Okay. Oops.
That's okay. That's why I mean you don't really hear their names actually, except William Money, who was.
That's a really cool name. I like that name a lot.
And the sheriff's name. That's
Little
really,
Bill.
Basically, that's how you what you hear from, let's say, 95% of the movie.
He's not Buffalo Bill. He's Little Bill.
And I never even hear the names of the prostitutes. They're all almost like they don't even matter.
I know.
Which,
the whole movie's about them.
Which, yeah, based on what they did, their action.
So that was really weird.
But Ned, he said, I'm going to he says, somebody go get the prostitutes and bring them here. And then he tells...
You mean Little Bill? Little Bill says to go get them.
Yeah, the sheriff, Little Bill. And he says, go get the prostitutes. And then he goes up to Ned. He's already been beating him, whipping him.
He's been whipping him.
In the back.
And let's be honest, Safi. Well, okay, you haven't seen it, but in that Agenda movie, 12 Years a Slave, they, like, whip the black characters for, like, 15 minutes apiece. Like, over and over again, and it's just beating you over the head with, like, their agendas. With, like, white man bad, In this movie, you had this very short but effective scene where they were whipping Morgan Freeman, and I got a little subtext from that scene, and so it just shows that like less is more sometimes. And I really thought that, you know, if you compare those two scenes, you can see why one movie is a classic and the other movie is an overrated agenda movie.
Yeah, I didn't see the other one either.
Oh, you would hate it.
Oh, I've done research and I know all about. And I just don't want to read about it right now. I've read real stories of people who what talked about when they were slaves and how they suffered, and it wasn't just all about whipping. It was a lot of things. But anyway, that's all something else. But anyway. So he says, you know, after the sheriff tells somebody to bring the prostitutes, he says, you know, I'd never hit a woman. I don't care whether they're a prostitute or not, or whatever they call them.
But he does endorse a guy hitting a woman.
Yeah,
he does
that was
endorse
okay.
that other guy hitting her.
That was okay, but
Yeah.
not him. Okay? And then he says, but I really, I can hurt you. And so then we find out, yeah, he did. He made good on his threat because the prostitutes must have told him who they were.
Now, and then the ending...
See, now we're filling in the story, though.
Yeah. And then the ending is Clint Eastwood comes to town. He kills everyone, including the sheriff. And he goes back home.
Well, he does this because he's mad about his friend being killed. He didn't know. He thought he was on his way home. He did not know that he had been captured, and he did not know that he had died, and the prostitutes told him.
Yeah, some random prostitute told him.
Well, it was the one with the disfigured face.
No, it wasn't.
I thought it was.
It was some prostitute with brunette hair.
Oh.
Some random one with brunette hair who didn't really... I mean, see, that was a problem. There were some problems in this movie. It's not a masterpiece. It is really good, though. I mean, it's making it sound like it's bad, but it is still pretty good. I mean, it's not great. Like, I would say Duel in the Sun was way better than this. Like, Duel in the Sun is just infinite times better. And that movie actually had better anti-violence things because, spoilers for that movie, Safi, you should probably cover your ears. Because you're going to be watching it soon.
Watching what?
Duel in the Sun.
Oh, I don't care. I
Well,
don't remember anyway. I have so much going on. It's hard to...
At the end of the movie, both characters are shot, and they're both alive for like 10 minutes, and the main character's actually crawling to the other one, and it's taking her like 1,000,000 years to die. And to me, that scene was so much better of an anti-violence type of scene than anything in this movie. And I just wanted to make that comparison because Duel in the Sun should have won Best Picture, honestly. Complete flaw that movie didn't win Best Picture. 1946, I think.
Oh.
And so at the end, he kills everyone. He goes home, and I guess he takes his kids to San Francisco, and that's it. And I thought, honestly, some of the best stuff with this movie was stuff that we never got to see. Like, because there's this whole story about how Clint Eastwood, William Money, he used to be a really bad guy, and then he married this woman, and his relationship with her changed him and made him a better person. And I thought that all the story with that was actually the best stuff in the movie. Which is sad, because like that would have been a better movie to me, would have been to see him as an evil piece of shit, and then he meets her, and he grows, and he has a character arc. Because in this movie, he really doesn't have a character arc at all.
No, because he's already done his character arc.
Yeah,
in his life.
He's past his character arc. In fact, that is my last point, really, is that this movie has been compared to Logan. It's been compared to Shane. I've never seen Shane.
I haven't either.
But usually in a lot of these movies where you have an old character who has to come back for one last bang. They always die.
Mm-hmm.
They either sacrifice themselves to save a younger, innocent person, or they just die, like in Logan. And I was so glad that Clint Eastwood didn't die.
Yeah,
Because
me too.
if he did, I would have put this movie at the bottom of the list. Easily. Because I'm sick of watching movies like that, where you have the main character, he goes through all this trouble, and then at the end, he dies.
Yeah.
It's like, F off. Just ruin the movie for me. And also, I think another issue is that you don't really get the feeling ever that Clint Eastwood is a badass. Like, he's supposed to be this hardened William Money guy, and you never really get that feeling that he's like a Terminator.
Well, I don't think he uses his real name, right?
What do you mean?
During the whole movie, I don't think they called him by his real name. I think they were calling him something else. And
they called him William Money.
Did they? Well, they did,
Yeah.
but I mean, when he was talking to people, he was saying it was somebody else.
Oh yeah, he was making up names.
Yeah,
Yeah, because that's smart.
And then it was brought up by the sheriff or somebody associated with him who he really was.
If you're the Zodiac Killer, you don't go to San Francisco and tell people you're the Zodiac Killer. And so, but I thought that was bad because another movie that Clint Eastwood directed was Sudden Impact, where he played Dirty Harry for the millionth time. He hasn't played that character enough. And in that movie, he was like a Terminator. Like, he shot so many people in cold blood. He literally did not care about the law. He just go around shooting people and like just as many times as possible with his gigantic gun. And there was one scene in that movie where he didn't even use his gun to kill someone. He just talked to him and gave him a heart attack. And so in that movie, he really was a Terminator.
Yeah.
And it was pretty scary actually. But in this movie, he never really gave that off, and so I thought that was weird because, he directed both movies, so I was wondering how he wasn't able to capture that same feeling that I got from that character being so much like a Terminator. So, Safi, what would you rate this movie in terms of food? Or do you have anything else to say about it?
No.
Sure?
I enjoyed the movie, and it was surprisingly good to me because I don't like westerns and I don't like Clint Eastwood, even though he has a ton of experience. He's been in some really good movies. He's played some really good parts, but I just don't care for him. And
yeah, well, it's really a personal thing for you.
It's a personal thing, but in the movie,
oh, that's good.
I thought
Just
the
admit
movie
that.
was really, I did. The
Good.
movie was really enjoyable. I enjoyed watching it, and it really is nice to watch a movie that you enjoy. Okay.
Yeah.
But just the only problem for me was that lighting issue, which I've never been shy about talking about lighting. So, which seems to be more of a problem today, but I'm kind of surprised they had the problem in the movie. Because of everything else was so, was awarded all these Oscars. They weren't awarded for Oscars for nothing. So, anyway, I would give it a really good, big, fat bowl of Texas chili with some crackers. And because Texas is known for their chili. And I guess really I should give it a good, and some ribs, because they really filmed it in Kansas, and you're getting close to Kansas City. And I think also Texas.
No, I meant that he was from Kansas. Like, at the beginning, at the end.
Oh.
You know how he goes from Kansas to Wyoming?
Oh, okay.
You should know that because you watched the movie.
Oh, that's right. It's whiskey. Was it Big Whiskey or Whiskey, Wyoming? Yeah. Well, I still give it a bowl because of the West and Texas and Kansas and barbecue, and Wyoming's got to have some pretty good barbecue. I mean, that's what it's all about. Beef, cattle herding, cattle farming, the cattle business is big thing out west. And also, they have, some people have also had buffalo. And we even have one here in Ohio. We did a buffalo farm where they killed a few selected buffalo and make buffalo and sell the meat. And so any kind of really good barbecue and with ribs and a good bowl of chili. And so I think that would be this movie. What do you think, Marco?
It is tough because, as I said, I would say the best thing about the movie is Gene Hackman's performance.
Yeah.
And then the story itself is really good, but everything else is kind of like, okay. I would give this movie, you know how sometimes at Christmas you could order sausages of different animals?
Yeah. Venison, anything.
Buffalo.
Elk.
Dinosaurs.
Alligator.
Prostitute.
Marco.
Like that guy, that serial killer from Canada. Where he, if you guys don't know about that, there's a serial killer in Canada. Oh, there's been a lot of them from Canada, of course. And one of them, he was a pig farmer, and at the pork processing plant that he would give his meat to, they found all this human DNA in the meat at the plant. And so it turned out that all the meat that people were eating from the stores were all human meat. And that he had been supplying them little parts from his victims. Like, that's pretty gross. You should have made a movie. Should make a movie about that, Clint Eastwood. I would say that this movie is like if you got a variety pack of sausages, and you got some buffalo sausages, that'd be Gene Hackman, and you got all these different sausages, and just, you don't eat sausage all the time. I don't watch westerns all the time, but when you do, it's like a special treat. And it's not really a meal, because this movie's very simple. It still feels incomplete to me, because what happens to the prostitutes? Like, you had that quote-unquote disfigure one, and I'm not kidding you guys, at the end of the movie, all she does is just stare at Clint Eastwood riding off. Like, she doesn't do anything. She doesn't have any final scene. She doesn't have any sort of, final, anything. It's just like, oh, she just looks at Clint Eastwood. So this movie is really not a full meal, but it's still a really good little variety pack of sausages that you could order from a magazine around Christmas time and enjoy it. And you have all the different types of sausages. That's one of my favorite things, is having those sausages. Because sausage is really good. It's an underrated snack. So, Safi?
Well, if you like this video, please smack that like button and become one of our subscribers, and so we can share in a discussion about these movies, this movie in particular, or anything else that's movie or TV show related. So, goodbye
Goodbye, everybody!